There are 1, 2, 3 Ohio State representatives on the cover of EA Sports College Football 26. That's pretty good. And it's also, you won't believe it, the exact number of things that we talk about on Three Things Thursday on the Beat. Welcome back to the Austin and Birm Show. That is Birm. I am Austin. And nobody else in the country, Birm, can match Caleb Downs, Jeremiah Smith, and head coach Ryan Day. 3 Buckeyes on the cover of the deluxe edition of your favorite game. That's pretty good.
Are you sure? Because I did not count on the deluxe cover of exactly every representative.
I got a press release that said Ohio State was the only program with 3, and it's got to be true. I didn't count it either.
EA Sports would never lie to us. I was curious about some of the inclusions on that deluxe cover, but I guess I think maybe it seems like, now that I'm thinking about it, were they trying to include all the people who were on former covers? Because Reggie Bush was on there, Denard Robinson was on there, Tim Tebow's on there. Now it makes perfect sense. I just solved the puzzle.
You did it.
This is the beauty of just having a free-flowing conversation, because I really had been thinking about, like, what the hell is Denard Robinson doing on this cover? And now I've sorted it out. It's all the old covers. So, it's good for Ohio State. It's to the victor goes the spoils, right? Ohio State wins the national championship. They have the 2 best players in college football. Those players should be on the cover. Ryan Day is one of 3 head coaches in college football to have be an active coach that has a national championship. He deserves to be on the cover. If I have one complaint, and of course I do, because complaining is what I do, it's that Ryan Williams doesn't belong on the primary cover with Jeremiah Smith. Caleb Downs does. And I think for future releases, for future reference, the EA Sports folks should just make the primary game cover an homage to the national champion from the year before. I don't know. I think that you can still get creative and do different stuff on the deluxe cover if you want. I know people are going to be like, why are you guys spending so much time talking about a dumb video game? But it's the off season, and this is the most important thing that people on the internet are talking about on Tuesday, Wednesday of this week, because it's all people care about. And the game last year had been away for 10 years. There was such a lot of hullabaloo about who's going to be on the cover, and you had Quinn Ewers and Travis Hunter and unbelievably Donovan Edwards.
Great choice there.
I mean, just they really whiffed on 2 of those 3, to be honest, if we're calling a spade. But moving forward, it makes perfect sense to me that the primary game cover should just be an homage to the national champions. And this year's gets half of it right. I think it's hilarious. I think I saw Bobby Carpenter mention that they had to put Jeremiah Smith on the cover kneeling down, because if they had him standing up next to Ryan Williams, that it wouldn't look right, and you question if they actually played the same position. But it's an Ohio State world right now, and people need to adapt to it. And the Buckeyes have earned their stripes and their spot on the cover.
Yeah, I only played the video game twice when you brought the console on the road last year. So it's not like I care all that much about the details of the game, or if they got the graphics right, or did this or that correctly and made it as true to life as possible, which EA Sports, as I'm told, it used to be, if it was in the game, then it's in the game. So I don't really care about that part of it, but I have come around, and there was some stuff last summer that we got to get into with toughest venues to go play in and player rankings and all those things. And I actually find that a lot more interesting now than I thought I would have a year ago. I kind of scoffed at it. It's like, we got 3 episodes out of college football video game stuff. But, I remember 20 years ago, it would be, well, who got the cover of the college football preview magazines in the summer, or who was going to be on Sports Illustrated at this time? And you would count those up, and those things don't really exist anymore. And so you have that part where it does become one of the barometers of college football, is looking at what's on this game, how the teams, programs, players are ranked. And then there's the NIL factor, which is not as critically important to me, but is still an important piece of the puzzle. And then the third thing is just like the pop culture currency, because those youths, Birm, and you included, play a lot of video games. And I think there were a lot of people that were like,
I don't play a lot of video games. I want to be perfectly clear. I play the reasonable amount of video games. Generally, which occurs between the hours of like 11:30 p and 2:30 a, when my house is asleep and I get a chance to finally sit with my own thoughts.
Okay, well, that's 1/8 of your day playing video games, which is more than I thought it was going to be. That counts as a lot. That's neither here nor there.
That's assuming it's every day. You see, it's not an everyday situation. You're talking once a week, maybe. So your point is well made, though. The fact of the matter is, this cover is a barometer of prominence. It is a barometer of importance. And we had a number of conversations last summer heading into the 2024 season where I told myself and everyone else Jeremiah Smith was going to be the face of college football by the end of his freshman season. And he is on the cover of this game. And the impact that he has moving forward on college football and moving forward on Ohio State football, Ohio State recruiting, like, I don't think that you can really quantify it easily. And again, Caleb Downs and Ryan Day are standing next to each other on the deluxe cover, which we don't have a photo of here, but they're not really prominently displayed the way they should be. But Jeremiah Smith is the face of college football. And that is so much, there's so much value in that for him as from the NIL perspective. I assume the cover athletes get significantly more than the amount that EA allots to every athlete, which I think doubled this year from 600, I think, to 1,200, or maybe even a little bit more, because they sold a bajillion copies of the game a year ago. But we look at Jeremiah Smith, and we're fortunate because we get to know him as a young man, and we've seen the humility, we've seen all of the things that he does the right way. But now, just from a national perspective, it's like he's the guy on the cover of the game, and now you just keep your fingers crossed that there's no EA Sports college football curse.
Oh, well, you brought that up. I think it even goes beyond that for me, where a little bit was like, what does this actually mean for Ohio State? And when you added up all those three pieces that I mentioned, and then, I don't know, high schoolers, middle schoolers who love this game and they're playing with the Buckeyes, or they want to play specifically with Jeremiah Smith, or they want to sort out the quarterback battle with Julian Sayin and Lincoln Keenel. It's like that further speaks to Ohio State's value, real world currency that they have, the cachet that they have. And when this was announced, I hadn't really put it in this perspective. I've thought about it in a few different ways over the last couple of months, which is I normally scoff at the APR. Ohio State's the only program in the country that got a perfect score of 1,000. And you can laugh at that if you want. They're all on track to graduate.
Right. You can claim it's irrelevant, but everyone's competing, right? And so they're the best.
They keep score. There's a coach who used to work at Ohio State who I covered for a long time. He said, if they're keeping score, I want to win. So Ohio State won that. They finished number one in the country. They have a trophy that they received for winning the college football playoff. That's in the lobby most days of the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. So off-field, on-field excellence. And now you just have like pop cultural staying power. And they seem to be winning at that when they have more players and a coach on the cover of this than any other program in the country. And I'll put it to you this way, Bernard, because I don't want to be a prisoner of the moment. I know recency bias is a real thing. I don't think that as strong as the Ohio State brand has been historically, which is like unquestionably one of the best in college football, I think it is quite clearly the best in college football right now. And I would say arguably more powerful than it has ever been in the history of the program, which is a lot of recency bias, but I also think it's true.
It's recency bias, but we live in recency, right? So I think that there's actually, I've never thought about this as you're saying it, I feel like there's actually another point to be made there, which is for the first time, maybe in Ohio State history, because it's the program that everyone in the country loves to hate. Ohio State's cool. Okay. Like Jeremiah Smith, this is the difference of what Jeremiah Smith brings. Okay. I'll touch you with a little personal anecdote. Okay.
Ooh, my favorite.
My 16-year-old stepdaughter, her boyfriend is a Michigan fan. Okay. Because we live in Michigan.
He's allowed in your house.
Well, that's a whole different podcast. He's a fine kid, nice enough kid. His favorite player in college football is Jeremiah Smith. So whenever
he's sound like he should be allowed in the big house, then
whenever he's around, he's asking like, "What's Jeremiah Smith like? What's it like? Oh, can you get me a picture of Jeremiah Smith?" And that's the way it is. And we talked about it when we were doing the wide receiver spring review. Being at Michigan State last year during the warmups, and the Michigan State recruiting section was all on the Ohio State side of the field. because Jeremiah Smith was over there. So for the first time ever, Ohio State's brand, I agree with you 100%, is more powerful than it's ever been. But I also think that it's cool for the first time in a long, long time. And maybe there was a moment of it with Ezekiel Elliott and the midriff and back in 2014 and 15. But other than that, I can't think of times in my life where there's been a national vibe around Ohio State that was like, hey, these guys are actually cool. And I brought up Ezekiel Elliott as you flip to the next segment here, which is who deserved an NCAA football cover from Ohio State that didn't get one. And Ezekiel Elliott is the first and only answer that really comes to my mind, because he was the guy that when I would talk to recruits, every single recruit, regardless of position, was like, oh, Ezekiel Elliott's my favorite player. Ezekiel Elliott's my favorite player. And only Jeremiah Smith has ever reached that sort of status otherwise.
I don't really know why Troy Smith didn't get one. Like, that was at the height of the game, right? I mean, that it was coming out year after year.
Who was on well, because they went, I think that was the year they went with Jared Zabransky.
Oh boy.
In the 2007 game. So that would have been the NCAA football 2007. No, Reggie Bush was on the 2007 cover.
So it would have been 2008.
The 2008 cover was Jared Zabransky.
Gross.
And 2006 was Desmond Howard for some reason or another. So it's interesting because I think that there are so many candidates for this fictional cover and guys who you could be like, oh man, that guy deserved it. The Bosas, Chase Young, obviously. But to me, it's only Ezekiel Elliott and maybe no one else.
Yeah. Zeke needed one, deserved one, especially after that. And it fits in with now the game didn't exist then, but it does fit into with what you seem to believe, which is honoring the national champions. And Zeke was the preeminent face of the 2014 team, in my opinion. Although we can make a case for several different guys, I think Ohio State fans might have a more. They may each have their own favorite guy from that team, but nationally, Zeke is the one that I think that team is shorthand identified with outside of Cardale, which could have happened as well, given his social media influence and 7-figure Twitter followers that he had after going to school, not playing school, tweeting at Ronda Rousey and everything else that was going on at that time. But right before that, I mean, Braxton Miller was also, he was not quite to the level, because no one is, of Jeremiah Smith in terms of national popularity and kids wanting to emulate his moves and play his position. But man, especially coming off of the unbeaten season in 2012, Braxton would have had a compelling case. They didn't win the national championship, so maybe that's why you're singularly focused on Zeke. But Braxton was electrifying. I mean, he had the spin move against Virginia Tech where people were, calling that X-Brax 360 like he was the gaming system. Like he was a video game player.
Yeah, and Braxton was, unfortunately, because the game didn't allow current players to be on the cover, like his height, the height of his popularity was 2012, and then he had the spin move in 2015. But I thought that's a long window between where he was really someone that people are clamoring about, the Penn State the 1-yard touchdown at Penn State, the spin move against Virginia Tech. There was 4 years between those games. So I think, unfortunately, he got a little bit overlooked in the big picture of things because there was maybe not a more exciting player in college football. And, I think you and I have covered this team for more than a decade, both of us. And I think we both would say that Braxton is the most exciting player we've ever covered, with now Jeremiah Smith sort of having a hand in that conversation. But
yeah,
Jeremiah Smith has basically just changed everything about how we cover this team and every expectation and every rule. So you could just always include him and then find someone else.
He's making it hard to talk about this team and the historical mile markers for them because he's blowing them all out of the water. Because I think
he was a number one recruit.
Yeah.
He won a national championship. Yeah, he's on the cover of a video game all before he plays a second year at Ohio State. So
those are three things. And it's Thursday. I mean, good job.
That's a Thursday. So he's changed everything. Okay, let me ask you this question while we're on the cover here. A cover concept, cover conversation. Of Nick and Joey Bosa, Chase Young, who do you think would have been more deserved of a cover at Ohio State?
I would have put a coming off of 2019 or even going into 2019, although it would have been tougher with Justin. Ohio State was in a relatively similar conversation with Justin Fields and Chase Young. It's crazy to say that is like not the level of Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs because they were both Heisman Trophy finalists at the same time on the same team, which
along with J.K. Dobbins, the third one.
Yeah, which I mean, well, he didn't go to New York, but he was receiving votes. Yeah. That was one of the crazier Heisman Trophy ceremonies that I've had an opportunity to cover. It was like somehow Ohio State, because a lot of the conversation about voting for these awards is if you have a teammate in the mix, it's going to cut away at the votes that you can get. Like it's going to eat away at your electorate. And that did not happen. And they had an offensive player and a defensive player, both bucking some historical trends to get there. And Chase was breaking records. And I would have loved to have seen, he missed 2 games where he would have probably had at least 5 sacks combined.
Yeah.
What those numbers could have looked like, and if they may have cost him the Heisman, we'll never know. That's a hypothetical that I won't entertain the same way that I will the fact that Ohio State would have beat the brakes off of LSU in the national championship game and then earned their cover the next year under your own rules. We can continue to have that what if game play out forever in my mind.
Chase was so dominant that I don't know that we'll ever see a defensive lineman at Ohio State ever be that good again, because we hadn't seen one before. I think there's an argument for Joey Bosa in 2015, although the statistical output didn't equate to what Chase was able to do in 2019. But Chase and Justin were so good that J.K. Dobbins had the greatest season in the history of an Ohio State running back. And no one ever talks about it. And it was 6 years ago. And it's like, who cares? Only running back in school history to run for 2,000 yards. And people just like brush it off. And it was just a ho-hum. That's just what you expect because Justin and Chase were in the same conversation as Jeremiah and Caleb Downs. And like these are not just electric generational type players on the field, but they are like needle movers when it comes to the pop culture. And we've seen a lot of them at Ohio State, but man, the last decade, the Urban Meyer era, and now the real meat of the Ryan Day era has really elevated Ohio State's place in pop culture. And you know, not even Keanu Reeves can top it at this point.
To answer your question directly, I would say that Chase is number 1, but he would need to be on there with Justin Fields. That would have been a very cool cover. And then
I think you just have both Bosa boys on there.
I think you could put them on together. Like we always talk about this with the defensive line and defensive end legacy for Ohio State with both Bosa's and Chase Young. And we always gloss over the fact that we got cheated out of seeing the best version of Nick Bosa at Ohio State. You look at the statistical production, and it's like, why? If you didn't know anything else about Nick Bosa and what happened when he got to the NFL level, you'd be like, why is he such a revered figure around Columbus? Like he barely made an impact in the record book. Well, then you have to explain the injuries and the rotation that went on before. Like, so I don't know that Nick ever fully got out of Joey Bosa's shadow at Ohio State.
No, Joey was a much better Ohio State football player than Nick was.
Yeah. But Nick was gonna be better than Joey.
Yeah, to your point, like we as Ohio State media members and ostensibly, or at least somewhat on the peripherally Ohio State fans at this point because of our relationships with the people, we got screwed out of Nick Bosa and Chase Young in 2018 and Jackson Smith and Jigba and Marvin Harrison in 2023. So those were two, like now we're completely changing the things we're talking about. But those 2 years are like, I look back and I'm like, man, those are 2 years where I'm like, as a fan of Ohio State football, I feel terrible for people who weren't able to see what those years would have been like. Because imagine 2018 was like the worst defense in school history. And it would have had Chase Young and Nick Bosa as defensive ends. And I think it probably would have turned out a lot different. You probably wouldn't have needed Brendan White to play linebacker in the Rose Bowl to find a way to squeak out a win there.
Yeah, no, I think adding healthy Nick Bosa to that rotation probably would have helped Ohio State. That's a great point. But I think people, if you're just now discovering Austin and Birm, and you think, why aren't they sticking to 3 things? Well, it's because we never do. But longtime listeners will know that 3 things is just a shorthand for what day of the week it is.
And it's just whatever we feel like talking about. And that's what I feel like talking about, the old days.
Yeah. Well, how about some new days and a new day, perhaps?
Okay.
I think, Birm, you convince me if I'm wrong. I don't know that Ryan Day would have flown out to the Rose Bowl, participated in a photo shoot, or let EA Sports put all those ping pong balls all over him for motion capture at this time a year ago. I don't think he was in the mind frame for that. I don't think he would have wanted that. I think he would have potentially viewed it as a distraction, and I could probably name like 10 other excuses that he may have made for it. And I am admitting that I could be wrong about that. It's not like it was a huge time constraint for him, but I feel like he's finding.
And he used it as an opportunity to take RJ out to see UCLA for a college visit.
And so he double dipped on that part, which is something that you can do when you're a national champion as well. You can make some of the rules. Maybe he demanded that it was done on the state. No, I shouldn't say that. I don't know anything about that. But my point is, you look at it now. Doors are open for you in a different way once you've won that national championship. And maybe he wouldn't have even been invited to do some of this a year ago, even though he was the coach of Ohio State. So, I'm arguing with myself already because I'm recognizing the fact that you don't turn down free publicity, you don't turn down video game, you don't turn down NIL opportunities. I get all of that. But you look at the other things he's doing, other media he's doing, Tonight Show appearances, and all these other things. Again, they come with winning. I understand all that. But he also, as productive as I think his relationship and his understanding of media is and always has been since he took over, there were things that he would certainly have said no to over the previous couple of years. And I suspect this would have been one of them.
Yeah, probably. But I also think it's a reminder of exactly how crazy this last year has been if you're connected to the Ohio State football program. Because as you said, if they had a bunch of coaches out there at the Rose Bowl a year ago for the EA Sports cover shoot, I don't think he would have been invited at that point, despite the fact that he's like the winningest coach in college football and one of the winningest coaches in college football history. I also he did talk about it. He mentioned the game with us when we had interviews with him last year about how he liked to sit down with RJ and he'd call plays. And so I know, he's the same age as me. He's 46 years old. So I know he has like at least a brain that says, hey, this is kind of cool. Yeah. But I don't think he would have dared think about this. And again, to my point about how different the last year has been for Ohio State and how much things have flipped on its head, the Ohio State representative on EA Sports College Football 2025 is Quinshon Judkins, a guy who had been on campus when he had done that photo shoot for about 2 months. So clearly, college football had a different idea of what Ohio State was, or thought Ohio State was lacking a true personality or a true identity, because they didn't revert to just using Brutus the Buckeye or bringing in Ryan Day. They were like, well, Quinshon Judkins, the guy from the SEC. Jeremiah Smith, I'm going to, because that's what I do, I'm changing the topic. Jeremiah Smith, the impact he made on college football is the reason why Bryce Underwood from Michigan is on this year's cover as a true freshman, right? They would never have dreamt of putting a true freshman on the cover of this game if Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams didn't do what they did a year ago. So everything changed. Certainly Ryan Day would not have gone out and been a part of this a year ago, without a doubt. But now he's a national champion. He can walk a little bigger. He can talk a little bigger. And as you can see on the screen, he looks a little bigger. The EA Sports representation of Ryan Day, which we can see on the screen if you're watching this on 10TV Plus or 10TV.com, is awful. It's so very, very bad.
If you're listening on any of the audio platforms, podcast platforms, I don't even know how to describe how bad EA Sports did here.
I don't know what he looks like, but I know it's not Ryan Day.
So remember in if you saw the remake of Chip and Dale, and they're like they're making fun of the uncanny valley, and it's like, remember when we thought this is what humans looked like? and they just like stare off blankly in a different space, and like you could picture, that it's not right, but you can't exactly explain what's wrong about it. That is this version of Ryan Day, and putting them side by side makes it look just incredibly bad.
Yeah, it's not good. I'm glad that there will be real coaches in the game. I think that's a cool step. I think it's a necessary step as someone who plays the game. I also think that as someone who was questioning what I do in my free time as a video game player, you just referenced the Chip and Dale remake.
Well, I have a 7-year-old daughter, Birm. Also, The Lonely Island made it.
All right. Well, I guess I need to maybe use one of those 3-hour video game shifts one late night a week to deep dive into Chip and Dale.
If you're trying to convince me and this audience, you look in the camera right now and you tell me that you don't want to watch something that Andy, Yorma, and Keeve made.
I will acknowledge that I was unfamiliar with the fact that they were EPs on this project. So now maybe I will have at least an inclination to YouTube search it and see if there's a joke or two that catches my interest and can turn that into an extended viewing session. But I doubt it. It seems unlikely. I've never been a huge fan. Plus, my middle name is Dale, and I hate Chip and Dale growing up because of that. Because I hate my middle name, and so people would mock me if they knew it, and they'd be, "Oh, Chip and Dale, you're a chipmunk, derp, derp, derp." And so, like, there's actually like a real visceral reaction to those stupid chipmunks. Also, do you have chipmunks around your home?
No. Squirrels and the Dublin skunks.
I have chipmunks, and they are horrible little creatures. And so, yeah, they're cute. They're super cute. And I'm sure they're hilarious when Andy, Yorm, and Keeve are the ones voicing their shenanigans. But as actual mammals, they're amongst the worst. Yeah. And I can't stand for any more celebration of these little home wreckers. Okay. It is a foundational complaint. Literally, they attack your home's foundation. And they ruin things.
We're so far off the rails. You can tell, by the way, that we haven't spoken in 5 days, and we've got a lot of catching up to do.
Just gave away the secret. So Friday.
Well, you don't want me to keep pretending anymore, so I'm not going to.
So Austin we're recording this late on Wednesday night because Austin just got back from Texas, where he goes for Memorial Day to see his family every year. So we recorded the Tuesday, Wednesday versions of the show at the end of last week. So now we're talking a little bit, and I haven't spoken to anybody other than my wife for the last 5 days. So I'm starting to get a little bit anxious. But I think Friday, we should probably give a little look ahead into the first official visit weekend of the 2026 recruiting cycle for Ohio State. 12 different official visitors, 3 5-star prospects coming to town. There's going to be a lot to talk about, and I think we should probably dive into that.
Okay, there we will. And we'll also have 1, 2, 3 kickoff times to confirm for you. And you already know what one of them is. So you'll be disappointed, but it will be publicly confirmed.
I don't know. I don't get those text messages or emails, but I do know, since we can just now talk about anything for the next couple of minutes until we wrap this up. How about Texas actually choosing to say, hey, we are not going to do this? So they could have said yes. Why does Texas get the option to deny Ohio State what they want for a home game? Can you explain that to me?
Yeah. Well, they contracted the date of this game. So, Ohio State and their broadcast partners are able to do anything they want with the kickoff time on the day of that game. But once you get to this point in the schedule, any movement of the actual date does require the other partner in your non-conference contractual agreement to move that. So this wasn't a matter just for Fox, which I think Ohio State, and Ross Bjork deserve credit for at least saying, can you find another option? And Fox, I think, deserves credit for saying, we would be open to the idea of Sunday. But this is what I mentioned a couple weeks ago. They were going to run into contractual limitations, be that with Fox in primetime on that Saturday night because of the baseball game, because of Major League Baseball and that deal that they couldn't really jeopardize. And then if they cleared some of these other hurdles, Texas could still put the kibosh on that. And we can laugh at the reasons and say, oh, you need an extra day to prepare for San Jose State, or you can't afford to change your charter flight or get the different hotel rooms.
Like, Chris Conte wants to go to church. What he said. Here's the deal. It's a simple fix. In the future, all of these non-conference games need to be slated for a weekend and not a specific date. That way you got some flexibility. We're all learning as we go. We're all also
don't play non-conference games and just play 12 Big Ten games. And
but that's coming. That's coming down the pike.
Everything will fix itself. So anyway, we started by talking about video games and we ended with Chip and Dale and then somehow spun back into football. It was a 30 Things Thursday.
If you're watching this backwards, it probably makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Minus the Chip and Dale conversation. And by Chip and Dale, we mean the cartoon chipmunks, not the erotic male dancers.
Okay,
that's a Friday show. If you know,
we have spun fully out of control on this Thursday, but we appreciate you coming to hang out with us again. YouTube will be up and running in the days ahead, so you can watch out for that there. You can get us on every audio platform where you consume content, and of course, you can get us on 10 TV Plus, and 97.1 The Fan. Great to be back. Great to catch up with Birm, and we'll see you on Friday, which is going to be a more focused Friday. I promise.
Recruiting. Goodbye.
See ya.